I remember the day I found out like it was yesterday. I had walked past the house, the one I grew up in, and something felt different. The gate was locked, the mailbox empty, and there were signs that someone had already moved in. My heart sank. Wait, this can't be, I whispered to myself, trying to steady my voice. I ran inside, hoping it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But the truth hit me slowly, like a quiet storm. I was the rightful owner, and my parents had sold it to my brother. My stomach twisted, my thoughts raced, and I didn't know if I should cry or scream. I just stood there, staring at the door, trying to process how something so familiar, so safe, could feel so foreign in a single moment. I grew up in that house, the one my parents bought before I was even born. It wasn't large or fancy, but it was ours. Every corner held a memory. My mother's laughter echoing in the kitchen, my father's quiet humming in the living room, and the tiny garden where I learned to plant flowers. To anyone else, it might have seemed ordinary, but to me, it was a safe place, a place that felt like home. My parents were simple people, hardworking and kind. They had their disagreements, like any couple, but they loved us in their own quiet way. My brother and I had our moments of tension, small fights over toys, school, or silly misunderstandings, but we were family. I thought we all understood the value of this house, not just as property, but as a part of our lives. I had moved out years ago, pursuing work in another city. I stayed in touch, calling my parents regularly, visiting when I could. Every time I returned, the house seemed to welcome me back, familiar and comforting. I never imagined that one day I would walk in and feel like a stranger. I trusted my family, and I trusted that the house would always be ours, even if I wasn't there every day. That trust would soon be tested in a way I could never have expected. Even though I lived away, I always felt connected to the house. I remembered the small rituals, Sunday dinners at the table where my mother set out the food with care, my father reading the newspaper in his favorite chair, and my brother and I joking about school or video games. Those memories were more than nostalgia. They were part of who I was. The walls, the floors, the little squeaky hinges, they carried my childhood with them. Over the years, I had imagined inheriting the house someday, not in a greedy way, but because it was mine in a way that couldn't be measured in money. I had spent nights dreaming about returning, making it my own space again, adding small touches, keeping the garden alive, and maybe even raising my own family there. My parents knew this. I thought they understood this. But life had its quiet complications. My brother had grown more independent too, moving around and starting his own life. Our conversations were polite and warm, but often distant. We never spoke about the house seriously. It was taken for granted, assuming that things would just be as they had always been. I didn't worry because I trusted my parents to remember, to respect the bond I had with the house. I never thought that this trust, the very foundation of my relationship with my family, could be shaken in a single phone call, or that a place so familiar could suddenly feel like it belonged to someone else. It started with small, quiet signs, things that didn't make sense at first. I called my parents one evening, just like I always did, to check in. My mother sounded cheerful, but there was a hesitation in her voice I couldn't place. "Have you seen the house lately?" I asked casually. "Oh, well, not really," she replied. "Your brother has been taking care of things." I paused. Something felt off. "Taking care of things?" I said slowly, trying not to let my concern show. "Yes, he said he would handle some of the repairs, the plumbing and the paint." I nodded, masking my unease. But over the next few weeks, small tensions began to build. My brother would mention almost casually how he had taken over certain responsibilities at the house. It sounded harmless, but inside, a quiet worry grew. The house wasn't just a place, it was a piece of my life, and yet I felt it slipping away in tiny, almost invisible increments. I started to notice differences when I visited. The furniture arrangement had changed, things were moved without asking, and even the scent of the house, the familiar smell of home, felt altered. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that change was natural, that my brother was just trying to help. But each visit left me more unsettled, a silent tension pressing against my chest, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. One evening, I caught my brother cleaning the living room. He said, "I just thought I'd help," with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I appreciate it, I said, but my heart was uneasy. I just wish we could talk about things first." He shrugged. "It's easier this way." And that's when I realized the house was no longer just a shared family space. Somehow, quietly, it had started to belong more to him than to me, and I couldn't yet see how far that shift would go. The unease only grew over the following weeks. Every conversation with my parents seemed to skirt around the house. They talked about repairs, bills, or maintenance, but never about ownership, never about me. My questions were met with vague reassurances. "We thought your brother could handle it," or "Don't worry, everything is fine." Their words sounded comforting, but inside, I felt a hollow echo of something being wrong. One afternoon, I decided to visit unexpectedly. The garden, once full of my mother's careful planting, looked different. The flowers were gone, replaced by simple shrubs my brother had chosen. The living room had been rearranged, the furniture looked heavier and unfamiliar. My heart tightened. "Why didn't anyone tell me about these changes?" I whispered to myself. I found my brother in the kitchen, cleaning the counters. He looked up, surprised, but not apologetic. "Hey, I thought I'd fix some things," he said casually. "I appreciate it," I said, but my heart was uneasy. "I just wish we could talk about things first." He shrugged. "It's easier this way." And that's when I realized the house was no longer just a shared family space. Somehow, quietly, it had started to belong more to him than to me, and I couldn't yet see how far that shift would go. We sat down to eat, and the conversation was polite, but I could feel the distance growing. Every word about the house felt like a test, small, careful, almost indirect. My mother glanced at me nervously when I brought it up. I want to make sure we're all on the same page," I said softly, looking around the table. "Oh, we are," my father said quickly, avoiding eye contact. "Your brother has been helping, that's all." "But the house, it's mine too," I added, my voice barely above a whisper. My brother looked at me, a slight smile on his face, but I sensed a quiet defiance. "I'm just taking care of it," as if the ownership didn't matter anymore. I left that night with a heavy heart, walking through the familiar streets feeling alien in my own life. I couldn't shake the thought that the house I had grown up in, the place I loved and trusted, was slowly slipping from me, not through force, but through silence, oversight, and assumptions. And in that quiet ache, I realized that the conflict wasn't just about property. It was about trust, communication, and the delicate balance of family ties, things that couldn't easily be restored once broken. It wasn't a sudden confrontation. It was a letter, formal, crisp, and cold, slipped under my door one morning. I picked it up, curiosity mixed with a growing dread, and unfolded it carefully. My eyes skimmed the words and then froze. The letter stated, matter-of-factly, that the house had been sold, legally, officially, to my brother. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere. My heart raced, and my hands shook. I read it again, as if the meaning could somehow change, but it didn't. It was true. The house, my home, the place I carried decades of my life, was no longer mine. I sank into the nearest chair, the weight of disbelief pressing down on me. This can't be real," I whispered to myself. My mind reeled through every conversation, every visit, every hint of unease that I had ignored. How had I missed it? How had my parents, people I trusted with my life, made a decision that erased my claim so completely? I called my mother immediately. Her voice trembled. I I didn't realize, she said, almost pleadingly. We thought we thought your brother had permission. We didn't know it was yours legally. The words barely registered. It wasn't anger I felt. It was a profound, aching betrayal. The trust I had placed in them, the understanding that had been the foundation of my family, had crumbled. My brother's calm, quiet control of the house now had legal backing, and I was left outside, not as part of the family home, but as an observer. I sat in silence for hours, replaying every moment that had led here. The casual conversations, the small, helpful actions, they all carried a weight I hadn't recognized until now. And in that stillness, I realized that this wasn't just about property. It was about communication, about making sure our intentions were clear, and about voicing our needs before it was too late. I assumed my parents understood me. I assumed my family would never act in ways that would hurt me deeply. And in that assumption, I overlooked the fragility of trust. I stood there for a long time, letting the cool air settle around me, listening to the quiet hum of life continuing inside the house I once knew so well. And though the pain was sharp, there was also a strange clarity. I understood now that some things in life could not be reversed, but they could be understood, faced, and eventually accepted. The turning point wasn't just the loss, it was the awakening to reality, to human fallibility, and to the quiet strength needed to move forward. The days after that realization were heavy, but they were also quiet. I didn't want to argue or create tension. I just wanted to understand, to find some peace in a situation that had felt so unfair. I started spending more time reflecting, walking through memories rather than the physical house. Each memory, from childhood laughter to small family dinners, became a gentle reminder that the essence of home wasn't the building, it was the love, the care, and the moments shared inside it. I reached out to my parents again, this time with not frustration, but with calm questions. How did this happen? I asked softly, trying to hear the story behind the legal papers, behind their decisions. My mother's voice trembled as she explained, "We didn't realize the paperwork mattered so much. We thought the house was still shared in spirit." Hearing them speak, I realized that this wasn't malice. It was oversight, a simple misunderstanding, magnified by assumptions. And yet, the hurt lingered, a quiet ache in my chest. I let myself feel it fully, acknowledging that it was okay to be sad, to grieve what I had lost. But I also reminded myself that dwelling endlessly wouldn't heal anything. Slowly, I began talking to my brother, too. The conversations were awkward at first, filled with pauses and gentle clarifications. "I know you didn't force this," I said one day, "but I want you to understand how it feels from my side." He listened quietly, nodding. There was no argument, no resentment, just a recognition that mistakes, even unintentional, could hurt deeply. And in that recognition, I found the first seed of resolution. It wasn't about reclaiming the house or proving a point. It was about understanding, about reconnecting with my family, about finding a way to let go of the quiet bitterness that had begun to take root. Over the following weeks, our family began to talk more openly. We shared memories of the house, laughed over small stories, and even cried together when the weight of what had happened sank in. These conversations didn't erase the past, but they softened it, turning sharp edges into quiet understanding. I spent more time with my brother, too. We walked through the garden together, noting the changes he had made, and I realized he had tried, in his own way, to care for something that had meant so much to both of us. "It's not how I would have done it," I admitted one afternoon, "but I see that you wanted to help." He nodded, a hint of relief in his eyes. "I just didn't want it to fall apart," he said quietly. I also began to see my parents differently. Their intentions were flawed, yes, but they were not cruel. They had acted out of love, even if that love had been misguided. I reminded myself that people make mistakes, and that forgiveness was not about excusing the hurt, but about freeing myself from carrying it endlessly. I started creating my own space elsewhere, taking small pieces of the old house with me, photos, trinkets, and memories that could live in my new home. Each item became a thread connecting the past to the present, a way to honor what had been mine without clinging to the physical walls. In quiet moments, I reflected on the lessons hidden in the pain, that trust must be voiced, that communication is fragile, and that family, even when imperfect, is worth preserving. Holding on to anger would only isolate me. Embracing understanding allowed me to reclaim my peace. Slowly, the weight in my chest lifted. The house was no longer mine, but the memories, the love, and the bond with my family remained unbroken. And that realization, soft, gentle, and undeniable, was the beginning of healing. In the quiet that followed, I found a new rhythm. I visited the house less to check on ownership and more to remember, to honor the place that had shaped me. Walking past the familiar streets, I no longer felt the sharp ache of loss. Instead, I carried a gentle warmth, remembering laughter in the kitchen, my father reading in his chair, and my brother and I joking in the garden. Conversations with my family became lighter. We shared meals without tension, spoke openly about our feelings, and learned to listen in ways we hadn't before. The house remained legally my brother's, but it no longer felt like a battleground. It became a shared story, a chapter of our lives that, while painful, had strengthened our connection. I also found peace within myself. I realized that home is more than walls and doors. Home is the love we give, the memories we hold, and the bonds we nurture. Even when circumstances change, those things remain ours. The loss of the house taught me patience, empathy, and the quiet strength to forgive. Not for anyone else, but for my own heart. In the end, I understood that life doesn't always follow the plans we make or the expectations we hold, but it offers lessons, often wrapped in the most unexpected forms. And through those lessons, we can find clarity, healing, and a deeper appreciation for the people we love. Looking back, I see now that the house was never truly just a building. It was a vessel of memories, a reflection of family, and a marker of the life I had grown into. Losing it through misunderstanding, through oversight, through quiet mistakes was painful. But in that pain, I discovered something deeper, the difference between ownership and belonging, between a physical space and the connections that make it home. I realized that I had spent so much energy holding on to the idea of possession that I had almost forgotten the essence of what home really means. It isn't walls, floors, or furniture. It's laughter shared at the dinner table, the warmth of a mother's care, the quiet guidance of a father, and the presence of a sibling, even when there are disagreements. Those things cannot be sold, cannot be signed off, and cannot be taken lightly. I also learned that family is fragile, not because of malice, but because of assumptions and unspoken expectations. Trust is built over years, and it can be shaken in a single decision, but it can be rebuilt gently and patiently through conversation, understanding, and forgiveness. The house may have legally belonged to my brother, but the lessons, the love, and the shared history remained mine. And in that, I found a sense of peace I hadn't anticipated. With time, I understood that letting go of what I could not control was not weakness, it was strength. I began to focus on what truly mattered, nurturing my relationships, cherishing memories, and building new spaces of belonging. The house was no longer a source of pain, but a teacher. It taught me patience, empathy, and the quiet power of forgiveness. I also learned that communication is essential. Assumptions, even well-intentioned, can lead to hurt that lingers far longer than anyone expects. Speaking openly, listening fully, and understanding before acting are small steps that can prevent misunderstandings from becoming permanent rifts. My family and I had stumbled, but in acknowledging our mistakes, we found a way to rebuild trust stronger than before. Now, when I walk past that house, I don't feel lost. I feel gratitude for the lessons, for the love, and for the chance to see my family in a new light. I carry the home within me, in memories, in shared laughter, and in bonds that are unbreakable. Ownership of walls and doors mattered far less than ownership of understanding, care, and connection. Life, I realized, is often not about what we lose, but what we learn and how we choose to grow through it. And through that growth, there is hope, there is peace, and there is love that endures far beyond any house or title. If this story touched you, take a moment to think about the people you love and the memories you share. Sometimes a simple conversation, a kind gesture, or a little patience can make all the difference. Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you've navigated family, trust, and the moments that truly make a house a home. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales that remind us of the power of understanding, forgiveness, and love.